Hello everyone, welcome to Grow Your Future with Luxland. I am Zar, CEO of Luxland Investments. I'm joined today by our BDM, Marc Fator. How are you, Marc?
Great, how are you?
What do you want to talk about today?
So today, the topic we will touch on is renovations and why we do them, how it adds value, and I guess what we should be looking at in regards to expenses in comparison to the type of property that you bought. So this is something that you've got a very good specialty on it at the moment in regards to renovations. Elaborate for our listeners.
So renovations started for me back in 2008 when I bought my first property, and I had no idea what I was doing and didn't have any contacts who were tradies or anything like that. And renovating has kind of changed a little bit today, where you've got shows like The Block and Selling Houses Australia, and everybody wants to go out and renovate and think they're going to make $1 million straight away, where it's not the case. You've got to renovate smart, and you've got to be careful not to overcapitalize, because pretty much on every one of my projects I've overcapitalized. So there's a difference between renovating and having a finished piece where it looks beautiful, and renovating and for a profit. And I've done both, where I've wasted a lot of money and overcapitalized on my spend, and haven't got the return from it. But I've also renovated smartly, where I've just done what I've had to do, where pretty much what we do, like for our clients, where we just it might just be a coat of paint that we run through the internals and the externals of the house, and just to freshen it up, or the carpet, you know what I mean? We might redo the carpet. So renovating for me started from my very first property, and I've renovated nearly every one of my properties, which gave me good experience to turn into a developer. And you can make some really good money out of renovating, and it's something that you've got to do throughout your investment portfolio anyway. Like you would know that you've had to maintain your property as well, so it's the same thing. What type of work have you done to your property, Marc?
The type of work we've done, it's actually been very minimal. When I did purchase it, was quite it was a block that was less than 10 years old from when it first been erected, and it was at the moment there has been a bit of wear and tear. So I know that between tenants, whenever that may be, we will go through and again give it a coat of paint, give it maybe new I don't know, maybe a slight facelift on the kitchen, stuff like that. Again, we'll analyse it. We'll see how, if stuff's in pretty good working condition, maybe keep it, but it might be, in need of a slighter upgrade to up the rent. It all depends on what we can get for rent at the time and the market and whatnot. So, haven't really done much, which I've been pretty blessed with at the moment, I guess. But moving on in the future, I know that's not going to be the case in another, if I'm still on the property, which I plan to do so anyway in the next 10 to 20 years. I'll be definitely looking at, probably even in say 20 years, looking at some form of major renovations, maybe ripping up the carpet and putting floorboards down, because I know that's, that I think for that block anyway, it's going to probably increase the value of my unit specifically by tens of thousands of dollars, again, depending on the market at the time. But something you've done recently as well is on a couple of your properties is granny flats. It's big talking. It's a big talk of the town, I should say, at the moment. The whole granny flat situation. There's a supply and demand. Not so much crisis, but there's more demand than there is supply. It's as simple as that, and we're trying to fix that. And people are jumping on the bandwagon, but they're also able to profit quite Quite well out of all of it. So let us know, what have you done so far?
So I've done a couple of granny flats, but what I probably wouldn't count a granny flat as a renovation, because it's a new build. It's like basically building a small house. And you're right, like the demand far exceeds the supply, and that's why the granny flats are going gangbusters at the moment. And it's providing a 2-bedroom house. Most granny flats are around the 2 bedrooms on 60 squares, and it's just providing more dwellings for that demand, to feed that demand. So I look at granny flats as more so a new build or a development, whereas renovations, I think, for our listeners out there who are trying to build their portfolios, I think renovations come down to things like painting, new carpet, floorboards, like you said, Mark, changing the appliances to, maybe from white good appliances to stainless steel appliances, getting rid of the laminate bench tops and replacing them with stone, because stone's actually, it's not that expensive now, and we're getting into, the properties that we're buying for our clients, they're well over the $500,000 mark. So those properties, they deserve good finishes and fittings, and maybe when they were first built, maybe not, because that wasn't the type of market that was living there. But now I think it's paramount to adjust to relative to the market, and make sure you're renovating to a standard that market's going to be happy with. So that can come down to the bathroom. A lot of older places just have gyprock on the walls without any tiles in the bathrooms, right? So now I think it's pretty standard to do floor to ceiling tiles in bathrooms. Making sure that you don't have those old vertical blinds anymore. Change them to the Venetians. And also curb appeal. So making sure that there's a lot of street appeal to the property. So it's got landscape gardens. The driveway's in check. You've got a nice little letterbox there, and it looks good from the street. Because that's what valuers are going to be looking at when they first rock up to the house. So, you can get carried away with it. That's the problem. And I think the rule is if you put $1 in, you want to get $2 back. Yeah. So, you're basically doubling your money. And a lot of the time, people watch these shows on TV and they think, I just want to, renovate because I think it looks good, or and you get carried away and emotions get involved, especially, when you're doing it as a couple and, you guys aren't thinking with your business hats on. And what happens is that you overcapitalize, you don't get the rent that you want, or you don't get the place valued like you want. It's just important to have it to a livable standard for your tenants.
Yeah, definitely. Because
that's what the value is looking for.
I know one thing as well that I'd like to bring up is the fact that people think, it's because everyone else is doing it and it looks like it's easy because everyone sees the finished product. They don't see what goes on during the process, and they don't know, how out of pocket some people end up being, by doing these things. I mean, I have one friend in particular that's doing a renovation, which was a property owned by, family and stuff like that. So the equity was well and truly there. They refinanced on that equity and put that towards a renovation, and they've added on new parts to the house and stuff like that. So it's a complete redevelopment basically, and it's also blown out of proportion by about, I think from memory, $30,000 or $40,000 already, and the due date is now a further 2 months further back. So this is someone that thought it was going to be breezy, very easy, go in, do it, it gets done. But there are 1,000,001 different things that can happen on job sites and stuff like that. Materials getting broken accidentally and whatnot, sets you back, further costs come out of your pocket, stuff like that. You've just remember, do the minimal. Like if it's an investment property as well, don't get carried away with the emotion, because it will probably drain your pockets. There's no doubt about it. It'll probably drain your pockets. But again, if it's measured correctly, if you know what you're doing, and again, most of the people that are out there listening probably don't know what they're doing in regards to renovations. And when I mean they don't know what they're doing, but like project managing the whole thing. I can vouch that I don't. I wouldn't bet on myself doing it just yet. But it's something where you just got to be very diligent on, and if you can avoid doing the bigger things, I feel, make sure you avoid them at all. Not so much at all costs, but the best of your ability, avoid it, because the increase of value with a coat of paint and potentially ripping up the carpet and revealing the floorboards that are underneath. You could put, I don't know, let's call it, for argument's sake, on a $500,000 property, maybe even increase by $10,000-$20,000, in value, just by doing, call it $2,000-$3,000 worth of work, maybe a little bit more. But look what you've returned immediately.
I think people get carried away with renovations on properties where they think that they're going to live in it.
Yeah.
So they picture themselves like, oh, really, if I'm going to do it, then I'm just going to do it nice, like as though I'm living in it.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens there is that they make the mistake of overspending and getting carried away, which I have done as well, and it just doesn't pay, because at the end of the day, the property is an asset in your business portfolio.
That's right, yeah.
So you want to spend as minimal amount as possible, and
gain the biggest return.
So it's just like if you had a business that required staff, then you would put your best staff on to get the biggest return out of those staff. But you would pay them as minimal as you can, so you wouldn't put as many staff on, because it's a business. You want your wages to go down. And it's the same with an investment property. If you keep spending the money and going for the more expensive floorboards that look nicer and all of that sort of stuff, and the more expensive tiles, and what happens is that you're only just hurting yourself, because at the end of the day, you're not going to live in that property.
That's right.
So the way I renovate my properties, they're actually quite boring. The transformation pictures look great, because you take something that looks very tired and old to something that looks nice, fresh and new.
Mm-hmm.
But none of my properties will win any design awards.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like they're just very, very generic renovations, and they do the job. They get the tenants in. The tenants are happy because all they want is a great place to live with, appliances that work and that everything's in good working order. And, they're happy to pay that premium rent. But if you go too far above and beyond, even the valuer is probably going to look at it and go, well, they're going to do the comparisons within the location. So what we advise our clients to do is do the bare minimum. If you must do a major renovation, do it at a point where only if you are going to sell or remortgage the house. So I like to, for example, buy properties that require renovation, get tenants in there, make it livable. So if I have to do any urgent repairs, I will, but then do a major renovation 12 months down the track. Mm-hmm. So I land bank that property, do a renovation 12 months down the track, because that's when I have the opportunity to send the valuer back in and get it refinanced and work on my next property. So a lot of people make the mistake of renovating straight away as soon as they get the property and doing this, spending $50,000, $60,000, $70,000 on a renovation, and then, getting tenants in and getting the tenants to put wear and tear on the property. Then 12 months later, then they get it valued. It's actually the wrong strategy.
Yeah, definitely.
So there are so many tips and tricks that I've learned along the way. We don't want to, spend more than, say, 10% of the finished value of the property on a renovation. So, for example, if you've bought something for $400,000, and once you've renovated it, you think it's going to be worth $500,000, that's your projected figure, then you shouldn't spend any more than $50,000 on that renovation. So that's the general rule of thumb.